You're listening to the Breaking Through Our Silence podcast, where we have open and honest discussions about the topics of sexual assault and domestic violence. We'll hear stories, share experiences, discuss topics, and empower champions together. And now, Marissa F. Cohen.
Welcome back to Breaking Through Our Silence. I have received so much support and positive feedback from people about I Am Vanessa Guillen and having military survivors and champions speaking out about their assaults. But what really makes me proud is the amount of love, support, and encouragement my co-hosts have received from this community and their friends and loved ones. The military, as we've so subtly stated, has a tendency to sweep these assaults under the rug, but enough is enough, and clearly it's time to speak out and change some policies. Today, I'm so honored to bring on Melissa King. She is a Marine veteran that served 8 years, 4 active and 4 in the inactive reserves. She's a badass champion who's speaking out about her abuse and how the Marines mishandled, didn't acknowledge, and completely ignored it. She's here today to share her story and empower other military sexual assault champions to speak out too. Hey, Melissa, how are you today?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Oh, I'm so good. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for asking.
So if you wouldn't mind, tell us your story.
So I guess my story starts with my recruiter back in 2010. Looking back now, he was a predator. I was 21 when I joined the Marine Corps, and when I was in the DEP program, being a poolee before I entered to go into boot camp. And he was a sergeant, and I don't know how our quote-unquote relationship started, but it eventually led to like us being intimate at one point, and I don't know, like looking back now, I highly regret everything that happened, and it was definitely an abuse of power that he pulled, and I know I wasn't the first, and I know after I left, I definitely was not the last. He pursued me through things like telling me he would wait for me and that I was the one for him, little things that women would like to hear from a man, but I know had no value and no weight to them. I remember telling my best friend Blake at the time about what was happening, and he was upset and he was mad, but he didn't say anything to anyone. He didn't report it, and I didn't report it. And I think that's, sometimes we regret it now, but I think it was for the best. I think it would have destroyed our career before we even started. And then I got to MOS school in 2011, and I was living in the barracks, and there was this corporal who was a barracks manager. And I later found out that he was from an infantry MOS. So I'm from dispersing, I do finance and everything. He was an infantry Marine, but he was, I think, such a complete shitbag that they removed him from the unit and just put him in the barracks. And he was in charge of, taking care of rooms and stuff like that, like management. And I forget how that whole thing started, but I remember he would text me late at night. He was a corporal, and I'm pretty sure he was married with a kid. And he would text me late at night and be like, "What are you doing? What are you wearing?" There was one day, it was in February, right before the Super Bowl, he called me into his office, and I remember I was in my camis, and he's leaning back in his chair, and he's just kind of "I have a proposition for you," or I have, this bet to make with you. And I was like, "What's the bet?" He was like, "If my football team wins, you have to give me a lap dance." I was a very insecure individual, and I didn't have the confidence or the assertiveness that I have now. So I did the shy little haha, that's cute. And he was like, "If your team wins, you have to come up with something, to do for me." And I was just "I'll get back to you." But in the office, he got up and he walked from his chair, and he just came over to me, and he was touching me, groping me through my camis. And I was just how do I get out of here? I have never been good at the fight. I've always frozen in situations like that. I wish I could fight back or just run, but my body doesn't do it. And I remember telling my fellow Marine about it. I was telling him, I was "Yeah, Hodges just completely groped me in his office and made a bet with me that I have to give him a lap dance." And my friend laughed in my face about it and just kind of walked away from me. And it brought me back to a time when I was 16, when I was raped by a friend, And I had told our mutual friend about it. And my mutual friend looked at me and was just like, you can't tell anyone what happened because he doesn't deserve to go to jail. And like having my friend laugh at me after telling him about what the corporal did just built on this foundation that I'm not allowed to voice what happened to me. I'm not allowed to talk about my struggles or like, I don't know. And then fast forward to Okinawa in 2011, later that year, I think I finally made it to PFC. So it was a very slow promotion. There was a sergeant out there that pulled the kind of like the same predatory style that my recruiter had done. I would come into the office and he would like leave little monster like energy drinks on my desk, or he would write like cute little notes in my green monster, which is our notebook in the military, or he would like send me emails, or we worked on this system, 3270 system in the dispersing office, which is where you can pull up all the profiles to like pay people. And you can send anonymous messages that like aren't traced, aren't recorded. So he would send me like messages on there. And I remember there's two incidences that really freaked me out. There was one where I was standing in the barracks hallway. I was standing with my back, I guess, towards my door. He was standing in the middle of between me and then like my group of friends. And he said something weird. He was like, I can control people's minds. And I was just like, this is a very uncomfortable conversation. He was like, I can control the men that are standing on the other side and they won't cross past me to get to you. And I was just like, okay, this is very weird. And like in the following days, he would corner me in my barracks room, like come into my barracks room and just like corner me up against the wall and like kiss me and grope me and stuff like that. And I finally had enough of it. So I told my roommate, who then we told our sergeant, who I guess then brought it up to the chain of command. And our gunny came up to me one day and was like, so what do you want to do about this? And I was like, well, I don't like, what are my options? He's like, well, I don't really know. He's like, I can move you out of your barracks room that you're in now and I can put you on the first floor. And I asked if my roommate could come with me and he said no. I was like, well, I don't want to be on the first floor in a barracks room by myself. Like doesn't seem secure. And then I asked him the question, I was like, am I going to get in trouble for what happened? And he was just like, I don't know. So it made me not want to pursue anything anymore. Like just leave it at that. And after that conversation with him, I just completely spiraled as a person. My foundation of myself was completely diminished. And I just became this person that I just didn't really like. And with my history of like past sexual abuse and stuff like that, and then being taken advantage of all the way up until this point, I dissociated a lot from what I was like feeling to what I wanted to feel happiness and something positive, but I was just feeling like a lot of pain. And yeah, I just became this person I didn't like. And my mindset became, I didn't own my body, that like my body was whoever wanted it. And it just led me down this path of just like being with people I didn't want to be with, but it was better to offer myself or feel like I was offering myself rather than them taking it from me. And my chain of command just didn't understand why I was just so out of control that I wasn't even at my office a year. They just removed me. They kicked me out. They put me on a completely different base in a completely different office. And they're just like, you can stay there. Like, we don't want to deal with you anymore. And I stayed in that other office of the security management office for like a year, and I absolutely loved it. I felt at ease. I felt comfortable there because it was just a corporal and another lance corporal and myself and a gunny, and they took care of me there. And then my office fought to have me back, and it was just a nightmare. And then I got to Camp Lejeune in 2013, and I was just a very disgruntled individual. I was belligerent. I didn't care to follow orders. I didn't care to listen to my chain of command, that I did whatever I wanted, and they still didn't know how to control me or like why I was the way I was, because no one ever sat down and asked me or like had the conversation. And then I think like 2 months before I was getting out, I finally went to mental health and just like talked about everything.
Thank you very much for your honesty, and you are so strong to be able to talk about this. And like, I'm looking at you and you have such a straight, confident face, and I'm like in awe of you. Honestly, you have dealt with so much from every step of the way. And I was taking notes as fast as I could. I was like so interested in what happened next? I mean, God, could it get worse? And then it did. And so I have a lot of follow-up questions. Feel free to tell me to shut up. I want to go back to the recruiter because, I mean, that's horrendous. And actually, I've heard that way, way, way too many times. And the guy who harassed me after he was in HHC in the Army, and then they moved him after 2 more reports after me. I was his 7th report. They had 2 more reports after me, and they moved him to recruiting. And I'm like, that is hands down the dumbest move that you could possibly do. I mean, of all things, why would you put this person who is obviously a predator? I mean, he's got the pattern, he's got the actions. Why would you put him in charge of people? So I would love if you would feel comfortable expanding on why you thought that, why it would have ruined your career before it started to have made a report about the sergeant.
Like, I knew what we were doing and how we were interacting was wrong. And I knew it was wrong because either before or after we had happened, he no longer was my recruiter. There's 3 of them in the office. There was File, Martin, and Arnold. And I was under File when I first got recruited and when I was talking to him. And then it was either immediately before or immediately after he didn't want me as his recruit anymore or his poolee. So he switched me off to someone else. And looking back now, I'm like, that was kind of sketchy. Blake was very mad when I talked to him about it. That's how I also knew something was wrong and that, like, what things that were happening were not right. And I didn't have anyone within that office to talk to about it. I don't know if it was the first sergeant or master sergeant that, like, ran that office, but, like, there was no one to turn to. Yeah, just that feeling deep down, knowing that, like, things were wrong, I think is how I knew that it was going to be career ending.
I think also because they have so much control over your career and the help you get and the contract you get, like, there's just, like you said, it's an abuse of power. They have everything to hold over you, right? And it's a disadvantage to survivors to not have access to resources if something were to happen.
I always make the twisted comment or the twisted humor comment because I have to laugh at that experience now that, like, I didn't get anything out of that experience. Like, I could have at least gotten at PFC, meritorious PFC out of that when I went to boot camp. Like, I got literally nothing out of it, but, like, a traumatizing experience. So.
Was there ever any harassment training?
Yeah, in Okinawa and, like, Lejeune, when you're stationed in your office or wherever your unit, you go through, like, sexual harassment training, you go through suicide training, you have all these annual trainings that you literally show up, don't pay attention to, sign a roster, and then you go back to whatever you're doing. Like, no one pays attention to it. No one knows that they're mandatory reporters, really, that, like, my fellow Marine that I told about the sexual harassment laughed in my face and then went on about his life. Like, he should have done something. I feel like I should have done something more in that situation, and I felt like I was failed in that moment. The gunny that came up to me and asked me what I wanted to do in Okinawa, like, that shouldn't have been put on me. He should have known the correct steps to take because he was the one teaching sexual harassment and all these trainings. Like, it boggles me.
Yeah, that's disgusting. The person who's supposed to be there to train you, I don't know if he didn't have any idea or if he just didn't want to deal with it. I feel like the consensus is generally they just don't want to do the paperwork, because to them it's just another set of paperwork that they have to do.
Yeah, and I was not well liked within that office to begin with. And it's all because it comes down to, I'm not a very good runner, and in the military, or at least the Marine Corps, you have to run, like, everywhere, anywhere. So my PT skills automatically made me a shitty Marine in their eyes. And I think from there, they just didn't want to help me anymore.
Were there any other women in your unit or on the bases with you?
Yeah, there was a bunch of women in my office. I don't know if any of them experienced anything. In Okinawa, I don't know if anyone did, but I know in Camp Lejeune, I was sitting with one of my fellow Lance Corporals, and she gets a text message, and it says something like scandalous, like, "Hey, sexy, like, how are you doing?" or whatever. And we didn't know the number, so we went on to, like, Google the number, and I found out it was literally the staff sergeant that was sitting behind her that was, like, texting her anonymously. And when I found out who it was, I went over to my other staff sergeant and I was like, hey, we have an issue. And the staff sergeant that I was texting her like got up and like ran away. You know you're doing something wrong and creepy. Like, you got caught. Now face it.
The problem is there's no accountability. So after the gunny came to you and basically said, the ball's in your court, what do you want to do? I don't know your options. You're kind of going to have to do the research yourself. Was there ever an investigation, or did anyone ever like touch back and at least check in to see if you were okay?
No, I remember sitting in the office and all the sergeants were like huddled together doing something, and they were all laughing with each other. And I felt disregarded and disrespected in that moment. And I remember talking to my roommate being like, how can they look at him and laugh with him when they know what he's doing? And I guess that comment got back to my sergeant that I'd initially reported to. And she was like, well, he's my fellow NCO. Like, I'm not going to shun him. And it's like, you don't have to shun him, but don't act like you guys are best friends. I don't know. Have some more respect for the person that just was completely violated in her own barracks.
Right. I was talking to somebody, I've been working with a friend to talk to wrestlers that have been speaking out on the Speaking Out movement. And one of the things that one of our co-hosts said was, why are people still booking these people? Why are people still like pretending like this didn't happen? And they keep getting responses from bookers and managers and people saying, well, what do you want me to do? Not book them? Yeah. That is exactly what we want you to do. Why are we rewarding people for bad behavior? You are abusing and violating people and abusing power to control and manipulate people. You don't deserve to be surrounded by your peers laughing. Like, you deserve to be behind bars.
Yes, I completely agree. Yeah, it just makes you feel so invisible.
So then what did you do? You said that you went and spoke to the mental health area of the Marines. What helped you heal from all of this?
Ooh, it took a very long time. I was so angry and disgruntled when I got out that like whoever slighted me in like the simplest ways, like I lashed out left and right. I just actually started going to therapy about 3 months ago. It also helps that I'm becoming I'm in graduate school to become a mental health counselor. So I'm understanding people's behaviors now, and I'm understanding like my healing process.
That's incredible. Thank you for doing that and for taking something that was so horrible for you and turning it into a positive. You have the power and capacity to understand and help so many people and like empathize with them, which is a very new concept for survivors.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to empathize with the people that commit the crime, but it's going to be, also hard to empathize with the people that are victims, because it's going to put me back mentally into a place that I'm still trying to heal from, but I think I'm ready to like go there again.
Do you have a plan in case something triggers you, or do you have any ideas of how to work through those triggers?
Not yet, but I absolutely love my therapist, and I don't know how to explain it. He's giving me the freedom to call him anytime or text him and be like, hey, I'm having like a day, and he'll be there. So I think that's right now my only resource and my only tool in my bag.
Well, that's incredible to have somebody like that. What advice would you give to other survivors of military sexual trauma that are going through it now?
Oh man, that's a hard one, because you want to say push through and take the chance of you want your voice out there. I'm not going to say never. I'm not saying stay silent by any means, but you just have to find that person that you can completely trust to help you through this journey. And don't doubt yourself, because doubting yourself makes you isolated and lonely, and then makes everyone else the enemy.
There's a great quote from Star Wars, and I swear I'm not a nerd. I don't remember it exactly, but it's like, the bad people win when we feel the most alone. When you doubt yourself and you're unconsciously isolating yourself from people, you're doing yourself a disservice and your community. And so you're not alone. You're never alone.
Yeah. It's hard to want to trust anyone in the military when they're the ones, hurting you. It's literally a domestic violence relationship you have with the military when you're in those situations. You love it, you hate it, you get abused by it, you forget you were abused, and then it just starts all over again.
Wow, that's really painful. Thank you so much for everything that you shared. I mean, your insight's incredible. Your story is heart-wrenching, and I'm so sorry that you dealt with that. But know that you have me as a resource. You have this community as a resource. You are most certainly not alone. We have your back, and you are so supported. And thank you for everything that you're now doing for survivors to help them. I think that that's amazing.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Breaking Through Our Silence with new episodes every Wednesday. Don't forget to rate and share this podcast. Stay in touch with us and have your voice be heard.